Maimonides' teachings, we do the laws of blessings today. Hilchos brachos. Whoa, beautiful. Let's go right into it. Laws of blessings, Hilchos brachos. They contain one positive mitzvah, to bless God's great and holy name after eating a meal. This mitzvah is expressed in the following chapters. So it's a positive mitzvah of scriptural origin to bless God after eating satisfying food. If you had just a bite of bread, that's not a biblical command then to thank God, because the verse says, when you have eaten and have satisfied, you're satisfied with what you have eaten, and we'll see what that amount is, you shall bless God your Lord. The Torah itself requires a person to recite grace only after when he eats to the point of satisfaction, as implied by the above verse. When you have eaten and you are satisfied, you shall bless. The sages, however, ordain that one should recite grace after eating an amount of bread equal to the size of an olive. So really, it's what that would mean today is one slice of bread. Like a normal slice of bread, that would be sufficient for you to do grace after meals, birchas hamazon. But yeah, again, that's a rabbinic law of the amount. It's a biblical law, the fact that we have to do this. Okay, similarly, the rabbis ordain that we recite blessings before taking any food. So, for example, well, I made blessings already, so I'm not going to make right now. But if you're having a cup of water, you have to make a shahakol ne'abidvara, as we will learn. That's rabbinic law, though. Even when one wants to eat the slightest amount of food or drink, one should recite a blessing and then derive benefit from it. Similarly, when smelling a pleasant fragrance, one should recite a blessing and then smell the fragrance. Any pleasure of this world, we need to to make a blessing. When we derive that benefit from this world without reciting a blessing, it is considered as if you've misappropriated a sacred article. So in other words, this belongs to God, and how do I have permission to partake of it? As I make a blessing on it, so now I did not misappropriate a sacred article of God. Rabbis also ordained that one should recite a blessing after eating or drinking, providing one drinks a revius or eats a kazayas. Right, so a revius is like 3 ounces. So you need 3 ounces of water in order to make the after blessing, or a kazayas, right, which we just explained, the olive size, right? To make the after blessing. So if it was cake, for example, you need that amount of cake, that would be an obligation. A person who merely tastes food is not required to recite a blessing before partaking of it or afterwards, unless he partakes of a revius. In other words, let's say you're cooking and you're tasting food to see, does it need more salt? You're not tasting food to eat, right? You're not tasting food to have pleasure from it. You're tasting because is it need salt or not? So that's not called eating. So you don't make a blessing. Now, if you are tasting it at the same time to have pleasure from it, that's a bit different, right? Okay, halacha number 3, just as we recite blessings for benefit, which we derive from the world, we should also recite blessings for each mitzvah before we fulfill it. So till now we spoke about blessings that are for the benefit, the pleasure that we have from this world. Now we're speaking about blessings over mitzvahs, God's things. That's also rabbinic law. It's not a biblical law to make the blessing. So when you're putting on your tefillin, right, or shaking lulav and esrog on Sukkot, the fact that we do the mitzvah is biblical, but the fact that we make the blessing is rabbinic. Similarly, the sages instituted many blessings as an expression of praise and thanks to God, and as a means of petition, so that we will always remember the Creator, even though we have not received any benefit or performed a mitzvah. We'll see that in chapter 10.
So when we say Borei Ha'etz, that's rabbinic?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Okay, thus, all blessings can be divided into three categories. Blessings over benefit, pleasure, or something of this world. Blessings over mitzvahs, and blessings are recited as an expression of praise and thanks to God as a means of petition, so we always remember the Creator and fear of Him. For example, you hear thunder or lightning, right? So you're not getting benefit from it. It's not a mitzvah, but it is remembering God as Creator, and that we bring greater fear because of, in other words, the lightning isn't just happenstance. It's lightning that God causes, and therefore we attribute it to God, and therefore it brings us an awareness of God and a sense of God's presence, and therefore the fear of God. Right? Fear of God, not fear of retribution, fear of God, of the presence of God in an awesome way. Halacha number 5. The text of the blessing was ordained by Ezra in his court. Ezra was the one who brought the Jews back to Jerusalem after the 70 years between the destruction of the first Holy Temple and the Aliyah to go to Israel for the second Commonwealth and the rebuilding of the second the second Temple. It was at that time Ezra did that. It is not fit to alter it. So the text of the blessing, you might say, well, it's rabbinic law, so, let me alter it or add to it because, detract from it because, to me, this is more meaningful. No. Whoever alters the text of the blessing from that ordained by the sages is making an error. A blessing that does not include the mentioning of God's name and His sovereignty. Baruch atah Hashem, Hashem Elokeinu, and then we say Melech HaOlam, King over the universe, right? Is not considered a blessing unless it's recited in proximity to a blessing which meets these criteria. All blessings may be recited in any language, provided one recites a translation of the text ordained by the sages. A person who changes the text fulfills his obligation nonetheless, since he mentions God's name and God's sovereignty. And the subject of the blessing, although he did so in an ordinary language. So you have to have the subject, you have to have the sovereignty, and then mentioning of God's name, and you fulfill even though you should keep to the text of the sages. Person should. Rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub, yay God, is not a blessing. Because he didn't mention His sovereignty, right? So it doesn't, you mentioned God, you mentioned the grub. I don't know, grub is,
Maybe an appropriate introduction to a blessing.
Huh?
Maybe an appropriate introduction
To a blessing, right. Yeah. Doesn't fulfill.
the blessing.
Yeah. Doesn't fulfill the blessing, exactly. Person should recite all the blessings loud enough for him to hear what he is saying. Nevertheless, a person who does not recite a blessing out loud fulfills his obligation, whether he verbalizes the blessing or merely recites it in his heart. One second. So it's interesting. Rambam is an opinion that's not held by Rashi, by Rabbeinu Asher, the Rosh, the Tur, and the Shulchan Aruch. They disagree. You have to verbalize it. at least enough that you hear. It doesn't have to be loud that someone else hears it, but it's not enough in your heart. I mean, I'm very curious for the Rambam why he says this. But what I have to see what the commentators say. What's the source of the Rambam for this? Because it's not the halacha. It's interesting. Second, let's see. Okay, let's just do it. Okay, whenever one recites a blessing, one should not make an interruption between the blessing and the subject for which the blessing is recited. So if one makes an interruption with other matters, he must recite the blessing again, and then you've taken God's name in vain, so you shouldn't do that. If, however, one makes an interruption which relates to the subject of the blessing, one does not have to repeat the blessing. What is implied? So a person recites a blessing over bread, and before eating says, bring salt, bring food, or give so-and-so to eat, bring food for the animal, or the like. He need not repeat the blessing. Why? Because it's all around food. If it was, go and, go upstairs, go bring me a book, go bring me the Chumash over there, it's not related to food, so then that would be an interruption. But since it's related to food, therefore it's okay. Okay, I have to stop over here. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a great day.
God bless everybody. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a great day.